The inmate who outsmarted an entire prison staff for 9 months, hidden operation finally exposed. The audit began at 2:14 a.m. when a sleep-deprived clerk noticed a ledger's irregular pulse, small withdrawals, repeated and precise, routing inmate trust money into an external account. On paper everything looked routine, dates, signatures, codes, but the pattern hummed with intent. Someone had been siphoning funds for months, folding the theft into the prison's daily rhythm. By dawn, Deputy Warden Mark Ramirez held the file and felt that chill only familiar to longtime corrections officers. 9 months of microtransactions matched staff rotations and vendor billing cycles. Ramirez pulled a compact team: Lena Brooks, the auditor who found the anomaly, Aaron Becky, a detective from financial crimes, and Lieutenant Clara Shaw, a contraband specialist. They started with what was visible. Inmate 4321, Garrett Cole, had a commissary balance that outpaced his recorded pay. Garrett's cell was unervingly tidy. A radio rewired to catch distant stations, a calendar marked with tiny symbols, letters with odd punctuation. Video of visitation and commissary exchanges revealed nothing explosive, only ordinary gestures repeated until repetition meant design. A visitor's brief embrace, a slip of paper passed near a guard station, a hand resting behind a book. The ledger led to a company, Meridian Care Logistics. Phone traces showed calls to a public pay line, emails returned bounced messages. Alone, these were dead ends. Layered, they formed a network, an ex-spouse sending early deposits, a volunteer who logged multiple book deliveries, a vendor contract with limited oversight. Each thread could be innocuous. Together they suggested coordination. Interviews pushed at the seams. Garrett answered in measured phrases, offering neither confession nor denial. The volunteer admitted an extra envelope tucked among donated magazines. Price, a night accounts officer, defended his logs with careful calm. When Lena placed a seized letter on the table, its punctuation matched Garrett's calendar. Price's fingers tightened on his cup. His records were spotless. His manner revealed a private friction. Forensic analysis broke a code hidden in mundane text, recipe instructions and newspaper crosswords that translated into account movements, when to shift balances, where to hide drift. The decoded directives pointed to Meridian, but also to a halfway house and a small nonprofit listed as a forwarding address. Ramirez flipped through nonprofit filings and froze at a familiar name, a person who had routinely donated books to Garrett. The room contracted. This was no lone inmate's hustle. It was a coordinated scheme exploiting charity, routine access, and lax oversight. If volunteers and contractors were complicit, the betrayal ran deep. As the team drafted subpoenas and widened their net, Lena asked for Garrett's visitor folder one last time. Between visitation logs, she found a thin envelope marked Meridian. Inside was a single sheet, a short list of names, some crossed out, an address that matched neither Meridian nor the halfway house. At the bottom, written in block letters, was a single instruction that made Ramirez swallow. Account: move when Price works night. Ramirez felt the air thicken. He ordered Price held for questioning and called for immediate audits of vendor contracts and volunteer clearances. The team moved with a careful, slow urgency. Aaron traced postal marks. Clara mapped vendor access. Lena dove into Meridian's filings. A lab tech then flagged a detail. The envelope's paper had a partial watermark used by a local halfway house. CCTV timestamps matched late-night pickups by a van linked to Meridian's delivery contractor. Suddenly the network showed movement. That evening Ramirez received an anonymous call. A flat voice warned them to stop if they valued their careers. Ramirez hung up, knowing the caller wanted to be seen. As Lena left the interview room, the camera picked up Garrett's face, calm, almost expectant, like a man who had anticipated their discovery and was waiting to see what they'd do next. The anonymous call changed everything. Internal Affairs placed the prison under quiet lockdown, restricting movement without alerting the general population. Rumors flickered through the tiers, talk of surprise inspections, whispers of missing funds, but none of the inmates knew the truth. Only one man seemed utterly unfazed, Garrett Cole, who continued his routine with the composure of someone playing a long, patient game. Deputy Warden Ramirez convened the investigative team in a cramped office overflowing with case files. The walls buzzed with tension. "This isn't just internal fraud," he said, tapping the Meridian envelope. "Someone outside these walls is coordinating, and they're using our own staff as shields." He didn't say Price's name, but everyone felt its gravity. Price sat in an interview room downstairs, hands folded, gaze steady. He insisted he'd only followed procedure and that the financial anomalies were coincidental overlap. But Lena, studying his employment logs, found irregularities, a pattern of extended shifts, access to the account server during unmonitored hours, and an uptick in system maintenance notes during the months the funds moved. He wasn't openly deceitful, he spoke with calm precision, yet the silence surrounding his routine felt engineered. Clara Shaw turned her attention to volunteer screenings. She noted that one individual, Laura Benton, had visited Garrett 9 times under the guise of delivering literacy materials. Her nonprofit handled re-entry support programs and had clearance to bring in books, pamphlets, and blank postcards. On paper, she was spotless. But Clara noticed something subtle. Benton had close ties to Meridian Care Logistics, and her nonprofit's mailing address overlapped with one of the shell organizations outlined in the coded letters. The team moved quickly. A warrant for Benton's records revealed payments from a consulting firm tied to prison vendors. The amounts were small enough to appear legitimate but consistent enough to suggest structured compensation. She wasn't the mastermind, but she was a conduit, a link between Garrett and the outside. Meanwhile, Aaron Becky was mapping out financial flows. He traced the stolen funds to accounts that hopped through digital wallets, prepaid cards, and short-lived LLCs. Every route led to dead ends. But one detail caught his eye. An abandoned postal box in a neighboring county had received multiple envelopes from Meridian, forwarded to a town 200 miles away. Inside that town, a modest apartment was listed under the name B. Shaw. No one thought Clara's surname was involved, but the coincidence nagged at Aaron. They drove to the address that afternoon. The apartment was empty, clean, and silent. The landlord explained that a man rented it using only initials and paid months in advance. He left few belongings, except for a locked metal drawer built into the wall. With a warrant, they pried it open. Inside were 5 cell phones, each containing fragments of messages, shorthand commands, bank routing numbers, and a contact identified only as GC. Garrett Cole. But the most alarming discovery wasn't the phones, it was a stack of clearance badges. Vendor badges. Volunteer badges. Even a provisional staff access card. All counterfeits, each bearing a different name but linked by matching serial number sequences. Whoever operated from this apartment had infiltrated multiple levels of the prison, slipping past security with ease. Back at the facility, the team confronted Garrett with the reconnaissance photos. He sat with his hands loosely clasped, expression unreadable. "You've built quite a network," Ramirez said. "But you slipped." Garrett studied the images as if critiquing a painting. "If I slipped, you'd have shut this down months ago," he replied. "You're only seeing what someone wanted you to see." His tone wasn't arrogance. It was certainty. Before Ramirez could respond, an officer burst into the room. "Sir, we have a problem in the admin wing," he said. "The entire digital archive just went dark. Years of financial logs, visitor records, vendor contracts, all inaccessible." Lena's breath hitched. "That system is air-gapped. It can't be hacked from outside." Ramirez stared at Garrett, whose faint smile widened just enough to confirm the fear settling into the room. The system hadn't failed. Someone inside the prison had shut it down. And they had done it at the exact moment the investigation finally began closing in. The shutdown of the digital archive detonated through the prison like a silent bomb. Administrators scrambled through dim corridors, radios crackling with overlapping orders. Files that should have taken seconds to pull were suddenly sealed behind blank screens and error messages. Years of transactions, records, and internal reports had evaporated in an instant. It wasn't random failure, it was surgical. Ramirez ordered a full sweep of the administrative wing. Lena and Aaron moved to restore any surviving backups, while Clara coordinated with IT to isolate the breach. But Garrett's earlier words gnawed at them. You're only seeing what someone wanted you to see. Every hallway felt compromised, every login terminal a potential trap. In the secure data room, the team discovered the first solid clue. Someone had used a staff access card, a provisional one, identical to those found in the abandoned apartment, to enter the server bay minutes before the blackout. Security footage was missing from that hour. The only trace left was a faint swipe log registered under the alias B. Shaw. Clara stiffened at the sight of the name. Someone is using my credentials as a template, she said, her voice low, her jaw locked. It wasn't an accusation, it was a threat to her livelihood, her record, her identity. The network they were hunting wasn't just built on fraud. It was built on mirrors, reflections designed to turn suspicion on the wrong people. Aaron expanded the traceback, uncovering a lingering shadow in the system, a dormant admin account created 4 years earlier during a vendor software upgrade. It had never been deleted. Garrett, or someone working with him, had used that forgotten door to burrow into the archive unnoticed. As they pieced this together, a guard rushed in. Deputy Warden, Cole has requested to speak again. Says it's urgent. Ramirez's stomach tightened. They moved to the interview room where Garrett sat, posture unchanged, but an unmistakable calm radiating from him, as though the blackout had been a test they'd already failed. You're looking in the wrong direction, Garrett said. You think this was about money, about accounts. But you haven't asked yourselves why Meridian kept volunteer access, or why certain contractors never rotated staff. Lena leaned forward. Then tell us. Garrett shook his head. You're investigators. Investigate. He slid a folded page across the table. It was a photocopy of a maintenance schedule, a schedule that had nothing to do with prisoners and everything to do with who entered the admin wing on specific days. Clara's eyes widened. These are vendor repair cycles. Some of these contractors haven't been vetted in years. And then the realization cut through them. The fraud wasn't the operation, it was the camouflage. The money laundering was significant, yes, but it also served as noise to distract from the vulnerabilities being mapped inside the prison. Doorways, computer systems, blind spots, predictable rotations, everything that would matter to someone planning a deeper infiltration. Or an escape. Ramirez slammed the table. Who's helping you? Who's on the outside? Garrett didn't blink. Check the delivery logs. Not the ones you see, the ones that don't get printed. They moved fast. The prison's mailroom supervisor, startled by the rush, pointed to a locked drawer seldom touched. Inside were unprocessed manifests, shipments logged to Meridian but never signed for by staff. Packages that had arrived without matching paperwork. One manifest listed a secure crate delivered 8 months earlier, marked for administrative storage. But there was no record of it being opened. The team located the crate in a forgotten storeroom between the infirmary and the maintenance hallway. Dust coated the lid. With a crowbar, Aaron pried it open. Inside were bundles of uniforms, guard uniforms, complete with badges, radios, and serial numbers. All counterfeit. All convincing. And beneath them lay something worse. A stack of laminated staff IDs featuring faces the team had never seen. A complete infiltration kit. Lena exhaled a tremor. This wasn't about leaving the prison, she whispered. It was about controlling it from the inside. Ramirez stared into the crate, fury and disbelief twisting through him. Where's the rest of it? Who's coming in? And when? Before anyone could respond, the intercom crackled. Deputy Warden, we have a situation on Tier 4. Several inmates are reporting unauthorized movement in the staff hallway. They say someone is impersonating a guard. They spun toward the monitor bank. One camera flickered to life. A figure in a guard uniform strode through the restricted corridor, badge flashing under the lights. The gait was confident, purposeful, familiar. Lena froze. That's not Cole, she whispered. And that's not any guard we've cleared. Then Garrett's voice echoed from behind them. You finally see it, he said softly. Ramirez turned sharply. See what? Garrett met his eyes, the faintest trace of victory in his expression. The operation didn't stop, he said. It just moved. And as the figure disappeared around the corner, every alarm in the facility erupted at once. If you think this case is closed, you have a lot to learn. Subscribe so you don't miss the next investigation.